Hello, and welcome to the Thyroid Warrior podcast. I'm Ebony, and I'm here as your wellness facilitator. I'm going to be sharing my experiences in managing Hashimoto's disease, and I really hope that it'll help you on your personal journey. Keep in mind, however, this does not substitute as medical advice. It is only for your information and motivational purposes only. Now, let's get started. Hello, friends. It's time to really and truly have a conversation about my experience with grief. And the last podcast episode that I recorded, it was definitely right in the thick of how really and truly sad I was. And it's not that I am outside of that grief or that sadness. That will be a lifelong thing. But what I'm learning is that grief is so much more than just I'm sad, I'm crying, and all the things, because we often go through shock, anger, disbelief, we're confused, and what I think we don't necessarily talk about is the process after a loved one has transitioned, and what does that look like, and how do you actually work on continuing to live when that person that you love so much is no longer with us. And while if you have lost a loved one, my condolences go out to you. And I really and truly cannot imagine how that has to feel for you, because each of us are very different in how we express or how grief comes up for us. But I want to share a bit of insight about what my experiences have looked like, and definitely how that has impacted my thyroid condition, and well, if I'm being honest, how I've neglected my health, and how even right now that has it's not been a good thing. So I want to talk through this, and I'm also going to just give a sneak preview. We will have a slight break in talking about grief, because we're going to have a very special guest come on in a couple of weeks, and they're going to be talking about what do we do when it comes to hypothyroidism with children. How do we talk about it? How do we explain it? And I cannot tell you how excited I am about that conversation. So I'm just going to have to leave you with that for now. But when we think about grief, one thing that I talked to my therapist about was actually anticipatory grief. And that has been the case with my dad for honestly the last 5 years. I knew that obviously he had cancer, and that may have an impact on our relationship and what we're able to do. And throughout that time, I really tried to focus on being present with him and being in the moment. And as someone who also knew a lot about his medical history, trying very hard to have conversations with him about advocating for himself and making sure that he got the treatment that he wanted and needed. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am to have processed that, because we used to go for walks in the forested area near the house, and I valued that time with him. I had such a wonderful time watching him frolic and jump from rock to rock, or him laughing at me fall, or him passing gas as I'm trying to get up this really difficult hill. And it's just those little things that were like, oh my gosh, that's so gross in the moment, but you begin to see the extreme joy in those moments. And that is something that I talked to my therapist about a lot. I said, there will come a day and a time where I can't do this anymore. And thinking about it makes me upset. But what I started doing was I would record when we would cook together and just different activities that we were doing with him, with the kids, my nieces. And I kept his voicemails, though when, the first month I tried to listen to them, I could not. But I listened to a couple of them yesterday and they really warmed my heart. And obviously, everyone is different. So you may not be able to listen to those recordings or do those types of things. But if you have someone with a terminal illness or diagnosis or cancer, what I highly recommend is just creating those moments in time that are so, so precious, because I'm thankful that I did that, because I get to keep a piece of those things with me each and every day. And I definitely made sure that I saved all of that. And that is something that I will definitely hold near and dear to my heart. The other thing that is really critical in this time is recognizing there are going to be times where you're in shock, where you're angry, where you're bitter, where you're sad and depressed. And the only thing that I can say is allow your body to feel those emotions, because for a time I was unable to do that because I was kind of doing all the things with family and just trying to adjust with the conflict and the frustration and all the things. But that turned inwards. And so it was very difficult for me to really and truly allow that grief to come out. And I ended up ignoring what my body was trying to tell me. And I recently just found out I had a double ear infection with the infection on my left ear was like both inner and outer ear. And when I tell you all that I was in an incredible and immense amount of pain, I am not exaggerating. It really took me back to those vertigo spells with my early days of not knowing what was going on. And that was incredibly scary. And I just want you to know that when you do not take that time to express yourself, to allow yourself to feel, it is going to come back 10 times worse with your body. And having a thyroid condition, an autoimmune condition, are just things that we can't afford. So those are kind of like the non-negotiables. Obviously, I do not want to go through this again anytime soon, but I know that it is a reality because my loved ones are getting older, and I know that that time is coming. But with my dad, it was unexpected as well. So it was very traumatic in that one day I think I'm going to California for a weekend. The next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call of, you need to get here now. In the moment of doing all the things, and this is me being very honest and transparent, I have talked about this with my therapist, is I can 1000% understand why people die by suicide, because in the midst of me doing all the things, in the midst of me managing the conflict and trying to be the bigger person and trying to be understanding, you can feel so alone. And you're heartbroken, you're sad, you feel helpless, you feel hopeless. And there will be days where every literal moment that I was awake, I was doing something for someone else. And it really and truly made me feel broken inside. And I felt like I couldn't burden anyone else with what was going on, especially with my feelings. My friends have things that they have to deal with and go through with their family. So, this is something that's very difficult, and I don't want to share this hard part of my life with them. But what I realize is that the people that are for you, and they want to be there with you, regardless of whether or not you have happy news or sad news. Now, fortunately, this is really the first time that I've ever felt supported by people, but more importantly, that I've allowed myself to open up, because I'm very guarded, I'm very private. I do not like to talk about myself. I do not like to talk about my issues, my struggles, my whatever with many people, because it has not been safe for me in the past. So this has been something that I have been working on so much, to allow people to help me. And it's been hard because, as I just mentioned, there are moments where I just feel so alone, but at the same time, I feel so supported. And and that's okay to feel those feelings. And there have been moments where all I want to do is just veg out, but I can't, because I have work, I have all these things. And don't even get me started talking about FMLA or job benefits, because that will take me off on a tangent that is not necessarily the healthiest state to be in. So I will release that emotion for the moment. But one of the biggest lessons learned that I have gathered from all of this is the advocacy work, the push and the desire to make sure that you feel seen and heard has come through full force. And it is something that I got a chance to experience this in real time, of working through and using absolutely every resource that I have ever given you all. And what I'm actually going to be doing is updating my health journal with information about the death and dying process from my perspective, and what are some of the things that can be really helpful. What are some of the things that you're like, wait a minute, I had no idea. And even now, trying to learn more about the support groups, about services for your loved one, especially depending on where they are, can be incredibly difficult. So it's just so much that I'm learning. So I want to end this particular podcast episode with saying, you are never, ever, ever alone. I know it might feel that way, but I really and truly want to encourage you to practice kindness with yourself. And in the midst of all of this, I did a kindness and gratitude challenge, and it was definitely much needed. But even with that, things completely fell apart. And I'm cleaning up my email list and doing all these things, and nothing went according to plan, because Murphy is Murphying, okay? It is one of those moments where I'm like, "Oh my goodness. Could anything else go wrong?" Don't ask that question. Just don't ask it, okay? Just don't take it from me. Don't ask the question. But it also taught me that having grace for yourself when these things are happening is so important, because now that my ears feel better, my sinuses are now draining. So it's being able to just say, okay, I need to take a minute. I need to take a deep breath. No, life is not going to stop moving, but I can do things to help me get through that time. So if nothing else, if you take nothing else from this podcast episode or even from this series, my hope for you is that you can know that there is a community out there that is willing to support you. And at the very end of this series, I am going to be putting together resources that you can look at and go through to be able to find support in your area, and what that can really and truly look like for you. So I just want to encourage you. I want to send you a very big hug from me to you. And regardless of what that difficult situation is for you, regardless of it's a parent, a friend, a pet, the loss of a job, moving on from friendships, all of those things can introduce grief. And I am not a therapist by any means, but if you have the ability to talk to a therapist or a mental health professional, I highly recommend it, because I don't know what I would have done during this time without my therapist, because I had her on speed dial. Like, look, I'm about to play DMX. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. And I can't do that because I don't want to go to jail. So I need your support and your help and your kindness and your ability to hold space for me, because she has been nothing short of phenomenal. So with that, that is grief. That is what grief has been for me. And I want you to hold that space for yourself, seek support from the people that you feel safe with. Whatever thing that grounds you, I want you to do that, even if it's for a minute. When people ask me, oh, what are you doing in 2 weeks? I have no idea. The only thing I can focus on is what is next. What is my next step? I cannot give you big emotions. I told my team, normally I am incredibly empathic and I can read between the lines, but my brain is in survival mode right now and I can't do any of that. So clear is kind for me right now, and that is what I will be to you. And in this moment, I cannot give you the amount of support that I usually would, but I am here to be a resource for you and to get you those things and put you with those people who can be that for you. So I really hope that you can find the language to be able to do that for yourself. But on the next episode, we're actually going to start talking more about living wills, advance directives, and power of attorney again. So stay tuned. Take care.
Okay, thyroid warriors, get out there and take things one step at a time. Remember, reflect on your triumphs, know that you are doing your best, and do what you need to do in order to be well. I would absolutely love it if you subscribe to this podcast and share this episode with a friend. And don't forget, leave me a review. I read those and try very hard to improve the show based upon your feedback. So I'd love to hear from you. And with that, be happy, be whole, and be well. Take care.